determine where the traffic buildup is, and
Yeah.
so we need to have cameras put in. I mean, I don't want to say busmen, private people, the lights on red and they're driving through.
Everybody, you see it all the time.
Yeah, right now when you reach on the lights and you turn green, you have to wait a little while to make sure nobody
So
comes
that's the
in.
low-hanging fruits. But Chris, what's the solution downstream?
Well, I mean, the commission has a problem because the horse are already bolted when it comes to
Yeah.
parking on the side of
Yeah.
the road, which is illegal.
Yeah.
How you fix that? No government will be popular for the fix. Because if you tell people they have to find a place to park their vehicle, or you're not issuing permission for you to buy a vehicle unless you could prove to the authorities you have somewhere to park it off the road.
Off the road.
Politically, that will be a debt to whichever party do it. But there's going to come a time when we're going to have accidents because you have so much build-up on one lane of the road, you can't use that lane, and there's only one, and people will be flying, coming down, trying to beat it to who coming on the obstacle side, and accidents are going to continue to increase significantly.
One positive thing is that you have now an established traffic commission with a staffing, and they have a program, and we really look forward to see how this develops. But clearly we can't, because we are not expanding our roads, we're not building new roads,
right.
Additional roads, so it means that the
finite
traffic
time mass.
congestion will continue, and it will worsen as long as you add more vehicles to it. It's physical.
Yeah.
There's no rocket science
and
here.
The average man who wants a vehicle will say, well, what is this? I mean, I'm an ordinary person. Why shouldn't I have a vehicle at my disposal?
Hard decisions down the road.
Yeah, and hard decisions down the road.
Chris, the September assizes opened this week. And as previous years, sexual offenses dominates this September assizes. Totally, there are 85 matters before the High Court. 34, or 40% of them are sexual offenses. But interesting thing, out of that 34, 21 of them are against children under 16. This is alarming. The increases in offenses to minors, sexual offenses. Also of great concerns is that we have 20 of those matters are homicides of the remaining 51 cases. So two things happening there. You see sexual offenses and a law directed towards children in particular, and homicides, murders. In other words, and that tells you the crimes we've been experiencing lately. Cause for concern.
It is, and you know, when you have such amount of criminal matters in the total cases, civil matters get pushed aside. Hence, the backup on the civil side has been years to get a case out, which is, you could argue that is not justice, because justice delayed is justice denied. So that is one consequence. But we have been talking for years about these sexual offenses. I'm not sure if you compare it to last year and the year before, if it has decreased. So I'm not certain.
What I understand is that the overall amount of matters before the High Court has reduced significantly, I think, over a 6-year period by 45%. So
which is
cases are down overall significantly. That's a good thing.
And that's a good thing. And if the sexual offenses were the majority, that means there's seen a decrease in that as well. And I think a lot has to do with the police. I have to compliment them because they have an SVU unit that's very proactive. And the laws have been changed so that there is quick action to these matters, especially where children are involved. And we know the impact on children. When you sexually assault a child as so young, the damage is almost permanent, and it continues to their life throughout their life. So these are areas that we have to continue to talk about, expose the perpetrators, and we have to do it across all forums, in the churches, in the civil organizations where we meet, and so on, in our workplaces, in the private sector. We are not supposed to entertain men or women who engage in these activities. If you're a wife beater or abuser, or whatever the case may be, I don't want to be your friend. And we, as men who are like myself, who objects to these things, I take a firm stand. And more of us have to do that and join hands in dealing with this situation, because it's a problem for our society.
It's a problem for our society. But related, of course, to this, Chris, is that this week well, also last week you had the Empower 4.0 being launched with as much as, I think, 461 young men.
Good.
And this program offers personal development, mentorship, skills training, entrepreneurship, opportunities. I am happy to see the continuation of this program. And Chris, the government does something well. That's important and significant, like the continuation of this program. We have to big them up and we have to recognize it.
Absolutely, because men are in crisis. We have always been saying that. When you look at the schools, when you look at workplaces, the women dominate because they seem to be more positive and more focused on what they're doing. Or men seem to be easily distracted and not holding proper positions. I mean, there are exceptions. I'm talking general here. So I think any program with Empower that focuses on young men and young men in crisis in the sense that they don't have the family support, they don't have the kind of direction and focus they need, equipping them with skills will also equip them with an understanding of how to diffuse situations of conflict. Because our men end up in more conflict with stabbings and chopping.
Precisely. So this is an avenue. And I agree with the Prime Minister. The Prime Minister said this is a transformative moment for the hundreds of young men, and I agree. And in this case, I want to recognize NULO because they would be undertaking a lot of the vocational skills training, and I'm glad to know also that the government has increased the subvention. I think it's now up to $100,000 a month, which is excellent. They need it, they deserve it, given the quality of work that they're doing. If you look at the graduates, the outputs, you know, what they have done. The National Training Agency is also, must be recognized here also.
I remember, Byron, just to interject, a lot of the skills that we need in Grenada, skills here now.
Yes, skills.
Remember we had the TVET program that's supposed to be doing that. We have people coming in on that TVET 1 or 2 based on their qualification. And then when we bring in people from the outside to give work permits, we call ourselves plumbers and skilled plumbers, but we can't do basic things. Deal with plumbing, deal with interconnections and so on, and how you do non-return valves and all. So the practical aspect of you certifying me. But when I have to compete with my counterpart from Santo Domingo or wherever.
So the standard, this is why it's CVQs. It's a regional standard. It's a regional standard.
But our CVQs don't seem to be matching.
So it's recognized. Well, it has to, because it's recognized in the other territories.
So we have hundreds of applications for. We have a major construction of a hotel. We're bringing in skilled plumbers, skilled carpenters, skilled masons. And then there's the other side of that I want to mention, the work ethic. Our people are not doing the amount of work that you expect. So a man moves onto your site, he reaches late, you reach by 8:15, he's supposed to start work at 8, he wants to have breakfast between 8:15 and 8:45, so he actually starts work at 9 o'clock. And then he goes early for lunch, and between then, he's on his cell phone many times. So what you're getting for the day's work is not comparable to what you're paying for. So that is another problem. So when we have people from Santo Domingo or Venezuela or wherever coming in our jurisdiction, these guys could lay 200 blocks a day. Our guys laying 20 and 40, and they tell you you're trying to make them a slave. So they're going to lose the jobs to these guys. They would. So it's not only what you talk about, equipping them with the skills, the attitude.
And that's a dimension of the program also, because there's a lot of soft skills, I call them, as part of the program. In addition to that, the government, the Ministry of Agriculture is engaged in training young entrepreneurs, farmers, fishers, agribusiness and agriculture. And I think that's a good thing, because we do have the aging farmer, and I think it's important that we have systems and programs to begin to prepare our young people for the future, for the present and the future. So kudos again to the government on
but
this.
There's a but. This is not the first time we're doing this kind of training with young people.
It's not the first time.
What has not been happening is it translating into actual business setup and having these young people manage a business. So I want to proffer that there are two issues. You may train a young man in agro-processing, but what are you giving him to become an agro-processor? Are you leasing out machines, a section?
So let me explain one program and how it worked, for example, Chris. And this was in collaboration with the GIDC. So first of all, young persons apply for the training program. Mandatory 5 weeks in-house training in entrepreneurial scale, business management, account, financing, business plan, all the details. Following that, you get a grant as a startup grant. In other words, to determine it's a test grant to see what your business can do. After that, you then get a grant for the full business because you would have gone through the training, the testing, and a stage. So I agree with you in that you must have resources to add. You can't just train because they would get frustrated. And I've seen this in Maribor, that a lot of young people trained as farmers and no access to land or financing, who joined the police force or migrated. So that's an important point.
Yes, because in the world of business and entrepreneurship in particular, young entrepreneurs, for every 10 businesses that get a startup, you'll have about 7 or 8 failures.
Yeah.
But the 2 or 3 that will survive may probably grow into major business. So we have to also prepare for the failure rate and what are the root causes, so that these same young people who had their business plan, had their idea, you analyze where the failure occurred and you fix it and you challenge them again to come again. So it's not just about the resourcing. If we choose 10, we have to decide to work with these 10 in success and in failure and resource it appropriately. And so that these things can materialize into mature businesses. That is, I think, where we have been failing. And we have not been attaching to these young business people, seasoned managers and business people who could guide them as mentors.
I think in this program there's mentorship also.
And that has to be a critical element.
This is a component of it, so this is really good. Chris, the Grenada Food and Nutrition put out a report, a report on children nutrition. What they do is they visit all the pre-primary and nurseries, and they express concern about increases in obesity and overweight of our children, because you know what that could lead to. I mean, the question is, why is this happening? How can we avoid this? Because if this is happening so early, it's a major health issue. How do we arrest this kind of trend?
I think it was the FAO, I could be wrong, that had signaled this happening in a lot of developing countries. And a few areas was highlighted as the main cause. First of all, the education of the parents, especially in the low-income bracket. Secondly, the need for giving children quick snacks versus cooked nutritional meal. And the third thing, of course, is the use of sodas in these lunch kits and so on, which is high in sugar and will push the children to the obesity level. But again, Food and Nutrition will tell you that when you look at lunch kits of children and food baskets of senior children in secondary, the issue is the mix. And how nutritional is the mix. And some children, due to peer pressure, don't want to open their bowl where mommy put rice with something and vegetable with oko. They don't want to do that, and parents don't have time to do that for their children anymore.
But we now have a school feeding program.
Yes.
That is free. It
and
used
the
to be $1.
Program
No, that's free.
That
so we
food
have
nutrition comes
exactly.
there.
So we have a school nutrition policy, and this has been in place since 2015. What I found out was that it proposes to use 80% of local produce. That doesn't happen, of course, with the focus on healthy eating. But what I read in this report, that the challenges include staffing, insufficient accountability, delays in timely replacement of equipment, and uneven salary for cooks. These are some of the issues that was highlighted.
That is 1 meal per day for the children.
Yeah, that's 1 meal. But that's
what
a critical meal. But that's
but
a
what
critical
happens
meal.
after when they go home?
That's the point.
And that's a major thing, because remember, they're in school for just a short number of hours. They may get a good lunch. Some who come to school without breakfast will look forward to that and their nutritional lunch.
That's correct.
And will hold them. But it's what happens after and probably before. What are the parents doing? That's why the educational element for the parents. And then single parents who have to rush to work. How do they coordinate themselves to make sure they're a decent something, a sandwich of decency?
What it tells me, there's a lot of processed foods being used on my children. But Chris, we'll take a break now. But viewers, when we come back, we're going to open the lines and we'll continue the conversation. So stay with us. We'll be right back.
After a disaster or emergency, Containers used for eating and drinking should be washed just before food distribution, especially those used for infants and young children, pregnant mothers, and older people. Eating areas should be cleaned before and after serving groups of people at shelters. A message from the Grenada Food and Nutrition Council.
Blast Gaming presents its biggest jackpot ever. Blast Mystery Progressive. I'm so excited. I can't hide it. The new Blast jackpot rising, and I like it. It going up and up and up and up and up. Blast up and up and up and up and up and up.
Play selected games to win in the Blast Mystery Progressive. Pick until you match 3 gems and win one of the 5 cash jackpots. Or you can blast up with the Mystery Progressive jackpot.
It's going up and up and up and up and up. Blast up and up and up. Blast Gaming.
Ministry of Climate Resilience, the Environment and Renewable Energy, in collaboration with the NAP Global Network and the G-Cruise Project, presents Everyone in Action for Climate Change Adaptation, a series of community meetings on climate change adaptation and resilience. Here are the dates to remember. Starting at 5 p.m., Monday 9th September, Mount Craven Community Center, St. Patrick. Wednesday 11th September, Granville Secondary School, St. Andrew. Thursday 12th September, St. John Anglican School, Guave for St. John and St. Mark. Monday 16th September, The Canal, St. David. Tuesday 17th September, Boca Secondary School, St. George. And on Friday 20th September at 10 a.m., we'll be in Carriacou at the Mermaid Hotel. Let's talk climate change. Let's talk adaptation. Let's talk resilience. See you there.
Welcome back to MTV Community Forum. Chris, Karani James, our first Olympic medalist, winning world titles in youth, junior, and senior, is among 13 individuals who would receive honorary doctorates from UWI during the upcoming graduation ceremonies across the university's 5 campuses. Is it deserving?
Absolutely. Nobody have done in terms of putting Grenada on the map as this young man have done. If tourism had to spend the amount of dollars in marketing to get the impact of Karani James, it would be millions of dollars.
Yeah.
Right. So it is no doubt in my mind that the value he has brought by the exposure through winning the medals and so on, and what he has done for himself personally as well. But in these awards, when they give you, he's getting a doctorate in laws.
Yes.
In law.
Yeah.
And in these things, it is about recognition of what you have contributed to your country holistically.
Yeah.
And he has given so much young people a hope and an avenue that if you be dedicated, disciplined to the sport, you can reach anyway. And it's not him, I mean, but his contribution has been first and greater than the others that we have now. But I think it offers our young people an avenue that you could believe in yourself, discipline yourself, commit yourself, and you can reach to the heights of the top of the mountains.
So we want to congratulate him and anticipate this with Dr. Karani James.
Oh,
what, Chris, before we move on, what, and I'm sure he has his own plans for his future, but should the state offer him a position?
Well, he's an ambassador of sorts for sports for the
paid
country.
position.
Well, I mean, I think that needs to be worked out with him.
Yeah.
Because you don't know what his
plans are. So we congratulate him.
Yeah.
Chris, of course, we have to go into the politics of things now, you know. Clearly, what we've seen some movements on both sides. We've seen the NDC firing Senator Lacrette, essentially appointing a young woman, a youth to the Senate. Clearly a move to shore up our young people. I mean, and that's I think it's a good thing. On the other hand, we've seen, and also we've seen Delma, Honorable Delma. She's now the head of youth and sports. I think youth certainly
full minister.
Full minister, and so we've seen that. Given her link to rural communities and St. Andrews, so that's certainly, I say, a positive move. On the NNP side, we've heard a lot from Dr. Mitchell. Particularly, we've seen what has happened in the Senate in terms of he not being able to, the action of the Speaker of the House, the Leader of the Opposition not being able to complete his contribution and left, and the NNP calling impromptu public meetings, or I would call it a rally. We saw this. But what's interesting is that we heard the pronouncement of the Leader of the Opposition, Dr. Mitchell. We've heard it in 3 occasions, actually. We heard it at the Trade Center, we heard it at Boucherjou at a public meeting, and we heard it again at the Women Forum. And essentially, what he said was echoing his position that he is the undisputed leader of the New National Party. And you don't think anybody would be foolish enough to challenge him, you know. And he's there for the long haul. We heard him say also, look, I'm in my 70s. My mother is 102. I am there. You know, I'm not going anywhere. In fact, our main task is to replace the government, and I will be leading the charge here. Now, clearly, that's a message to say, if anybody was going to interpret this, that the Leader of the Opposition is not going anywhere, you know, notwithstanding his major pronouncement at the loss of the election in 22 was that at the inauguration of the opposition, Leader of the Opposition, his remarks was, I remember it very clear, I will not be contesting the leadership in the upcoming convention. So what's this? Well, it's no longer a mixed signal. It's a clear signal. I mean, what does that do to the Peter David, who has expressed his position?
To challenge.
To challenge, not to challenge him, because
but
Peter...
vie for the leadership.
Vie for the leadership. Also, we heard right here, Honorable Eminent Pierre saying that if once there's a vacancy, she will contest it, and we heard also Mr. Horsford, the allegation that he's interested. So, and all these persons would have come forward with their interests and expressed those interests on the basis of what the Leader of the Opposition, what Dr. Mitchell would have said.
The key thing is once there's a vacancy.
But he said
there'll be no vacancy. You understand? Based on his recent pronouncements, you can interpret that. You can imply that he said to his constituency in Boucherjou that he will let them know when he decides he wants to vacate and create a vacancy, and they will be the first to know. And that is his prerogative when he does that. You know, we were told by Senator Cox that to have a general council before they decide on a convention date.
Yeah, I heard there's a date set for the general council.
Right. So we don't know yet if Dr. Mitchell, based on his recent pronouncements, you can interpret that he doesn't plan to go as leader and he wants to stay. But I want to also signal, and I think we have said this before when you looked at the politics, particularly of the NNP. I think NNP, and we could debate why they lost the election. But
by the way, Chris, hold on. Just want to tell the audience that the line is open. If you want to call, you can do so. Right. Yes, go ahead, Chris.
That one of the reasons for the loss was that they weren't very prominent on social media, where there a lot of the young people are, and look at what is happening and get the news. He was still in the old mode of big rallies and bringing in entertainers and so on with his base. That worked well for the base. Then there is the issue of, you know, does Dr. Mitchell party attract young people in the current rhetoric that they have? And that is a challenge, I think, for them as well. And even though he's appointing young people through the Senate and other things. And then there's the other major issue in my thing.
But the young person that he appointed have resigned.
Yeah, two of them.
Two of them.
Right.
They've resigned.
And there's controversy over the reason.
Precisely.
He said clearly the young man was because he wanted to pursue further studies.
Yeah.
But then there is the other issue. When you look at the previous people who contested the election in 2022, it was 22, and you look at the mix, a lot of the current people in the party have decided they're not going back. You have Mrs. Horsford, being Horsford in St. Andrews. I'm not sure that Dr. Clarice Modes Cohen will go back. You're not sure that
St. David's
Bowen will go back. St. David's have said. So there's a lot of changes that have to come forward, in my view, for that to be attractive to the electorate. They cannot go back with some of these elder statesmen. And you need to understand that if that is going to happen, the new people who come in forward need time to present themselves, present who they are about, so that the electorate can get confidence. I'm not talking about the base here now. His base is his base through NNP. I am talking about those who are on the fence.
The base is not going to win the election.
That's right. And the young people who he needs to convert. So that is where I think his challenge is. And, you know, a lot of people, I think, on one of the calling programs this morning, there was this question about when they believe it's time for a senior elder statesman to call it a days off. I mean, Dr. Mitchell is what, 75, 77 or thereabout?
8, I think.
If it goes to full term, he'll be almost 80 when the election calls. If he wins, he may make 85 in office.
4-0.
Right? So the issue is that the kind of person with the acumen, the energy, the creativity that we want to be leading the country in this kind of time? And I think that is some of the challenges we have to face.
Yeah, well, Chris, you made an important point. The demographics has changed, meaning that the bulk of our population is now within the ages of 14 and I think 45, not even 50 here. I don't think Dr. Mitchell has appeals for this. They don't know him.
Well, we could do, I mean, I have engaged certain young people and asked them if Dr. Mitchell was leading the party and they would vote for him, and they say, they ain't sure. Because they don't see him as somebody they could associate with, and the ideas and the thinking and so on. So it is, I mean, Dickon, for example, Prime Minister Dickon Mitchell, young. He dresses like them.
Yes.
They like how he portrays himself.
They identify with him.
Yes. He talks well.
Yes.
You may criticize him for being inexperienced in a number of things in public service and so on.
The appeal.
Yeah. But it's the appeal.
Yes.
Have he lost it or does he have it? And that is critical for people to convert into votes.
But he doesn't understand that, Chris. It don't seem so that he appreciates this. But on the other hand, I was reading an article by a senior pollster, I think it was, who was saying that whereas the NDC may be doing well in government, you know, in terms of the programs and express concern about what's happening on the ground, you know, the party work on the ground. They're saying that there's no evidence of...
It's almost non-existent.
Yes, there's no evidence there that it is active and working, and therefore they need to spend time there. That's he expressed that there's some urgency for the party.
There's another thing.
Because you were saying, Chris, you were saying that government doesn't win election, party wins election.
That's right. That's correct. You're absolutely correct.
I thought that was an important
point. And you have to energize your base as well
and
show certain things happening. But there's another thing in the opposition that I am disappointed with. Our opposition seem to be so caught up with their own internal issues and getting that settled that they are not calling out the government on obvious things that they need to call them out on. Dr. Mitchell, when you look at Parliament, had launched a set of questions, asking certain questions to be given answers to which he hasn't gotten as yet. But the opposition needs to do a lot more of that. You have the Molineux Road, you have the projects, you have the transformative agenda. What has happened with the current government that you could challenge? And we're not hearing that.
Yeah, but Chris, I want to go back to this leadership thing again, because here's the thing, you know, let's look around us, whether it's Australia or other Caribbean islands or Britain, what's happening right now. The government that led the election lost. And immediately you hear the leader saying, look, I'm stepping down. The party has started immediately making arrangement for transition. In our case here, based on the data, based on the information collected, that it would appear that the NNP lost the election among other reasons, but two things stands out. One was that failure to pay the pension. Clearly one of them, the public workers' pension. And secondly, there was a loss of trust in the leadership also. That's the second thing. And I don't think that trust is being restored right now. I don't think so. I haven't seen any evidence of it. Whether I go on the beach, whether I'm in the bar, whether I'm at the saloon, and talking to, or in the market, a range of persons, I don't get that. I mean, that's not an official survey. But just on my own interaction with the public, I don't get the sense that the leader of the opposition, Dr. Mitchell's supporters for leadership is widespread. I think there is a certain expectations from the public, from within the party and certainly the public, of change. And you want to also more relevance. And I recognize the work he has done. It's 40 years, he spoke about it. That's important. You can't put that under the carpet.
He also highlighted that we chose a young man with no experience in public life, no experience in politics, but that's who we chose.
Yeah.
You might reflect on us as saying, boy, that may not have been the best choice, but so far, it is a reflection that we not only wanted a change in the party that was there for the last 15 years or thereabout, but it also reflects that the change that we want is of a certain type. And we're not so much concerned about experience in politics, We want to see a new figure, give them an opportunity to be energetic, to be creative, to do things differently, and to see how it works. We may reject it in the next election. But again, it depends on what type of leader comes forward. There is an argument, it's time for a woman to come forward in the mix as a leader to lead Grenada. Excuse me. And that may have its own merit. But the issue is, when is the opposition planning to present that, or stay with the old, I don't want to use old in a derogatory sense, but in the old frame, with the leader of Dr. Mitchell's acumen and everything else that he can go down as being very good at. But is there something that needs to change on that side to attract the people on the fence? Because as I say, the base wouldn't change much.
The base wouldn't change much.
So it's the fence people you want. And that is young people primarily.
And what are you saying to appeal to them?
That's right.
Do you?
That's right.
That's just
and again, as I said earlier, when the opposition is so caught up with their own internal issues, they don't represent well.
No.
Because there's a lot of things you could call the current government on opposition, politically and otherwise. And you're not hearing that, you know. And so these are things that you lose in the mix when you're in opposition and you're not focused on what is happening. They haven't announced shadow ministers. You don't know who's the shadow minister for finance, for agriculture, for tourism. Nobody knows.
So you don't feel an opposition.
That's right.
And that's what you want. You want, I think for democracy to function, you want a well-oiled opposition that will challenge and create a debate and you get more out of it. Because you get better laws passed if you have this level of discussion.
And then, you know, don't discard, we have a lot of other parties that has come up around election time. The last election, we had about 8 parties contesting the election. Some of them know our full slate. I can't remember all the names of the parties, but a lot of them comes up. There was one that was led by a particular lady, and so on, and there are a number of them that comes up. You know?
So it's interesting to see how this rolls out, Chris, whether in fact the opposition leader will choose to remain as leader, or whether in fact he goes back to his word and not contest, and in fact you see new leadership and new.
I remember the gentleman announced that he has a vetting committee put in place and he wants the person to be on the conservative side. Again, that was challenged by long-standing members of the party. It says not in the constitution.
Right. Chris, I think we have a caller online. Go ahead, caller. Good evening. Good night. Go ahead, caller.
Yeah, good night. I'm barely hearing the audio.
We can hear you. Go ahead.
Right, going on now. Okay. In relation, well, you can talk about anything. If the NNP looking for a leader, I think they would ask NDC to help them find a leader, because NDC always seems to get our leaders very easily. They have a stockpile waiting. So probably they could ask NNC, ask NDC to help them find a leader, but that's not real issue that That's just by the way. I just want to comment about the opposition walking out of Parliament. And it is, when you really, if you check the history of the leader of the opposition, especially which I respect, let's say his name is Keith Mitchell. That's why you want to give a call to Keith Mitchell is his name. So it's a regular thing that he, every time he makes his presentation, he always walks out. He never chooses to stay for a debate. So that's a regular thing. But coming back to what happened, I'm not particularly impressed or happy how the speaker handled it, because he really didn't give Keith Mitchell an opportunity to present evidence before he expelled him. So I didn't like that. But all the rest that walked out with Keith Mitchell, you all have no respect. This is very disrespectful to the people of Grenada. And I have no apologies for that. Whether you're NNP or NDC, you have no right to walk out of Parliament. A lot of people have this justification that in Parliament they kicks in, and in some parts of the world that people just throw stone at one another, all this kind of thing, and behave reckless and irresponsible and worse than that in Parliament. And it's no big thing. It's okay. It is big thing for me. I am paying you to sit down in Parliament to discuss the issues. I have entrusted you to manage and run the affairs of this country, and Parliament is the highest place where laws are made. And when you do things there, they could always affect the lives of Grenadians. It's a very important place. You have no right to walk out, and I have no apologies, and I can say that to NNP and NDC, because that bill that was being debated, you talk about the supplementary, or however you call it. Keith Mitchell had no right to bring up this thing about apology, because that was not apology about what Andrews said in Carriacou, because that was not on the order paper. And Kevin Andrews said he had no right to say, he didn't say it, because as far as I am concerned, I stand corrected, but he did say the things, and what he said, there's nothing wrong with it. So maybe he could have defended it. He could have, instead of denying it. But he did deny it, and then I didn't like how the speaker operated. They put out Keith Mitchell and the others, walk with him, and that is disrespectful. In the past, NDC has walked out also, and so it's both on both sides. So I am addressing both sides. That is very disrespectful, and I was waiting to hear about the supplementary thing, because I wasn't particularly happy with the figures, and I wanted to hear all the explanation. And I was waiting for a proper debate, and this is what I am paying you all for. You all to disrespect me.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
You have to really stay and debate the issues irrespective of what happened.
Thank you.
Right.
Thank you very much, caller. Thank you very much, caller. That's a very balanced comment here. And in particularly, she said she didn't like how the Speaker of the House handled it. And I've heard a previous President of the Senate commenting on that, making a point that he don't think that the Speaker is sufficiently familiar with the rules governing the House, and is a bit so he should take time off and really study, acquaint himself.
It's not just the rules. Huh?
Yeah.
You have precedents as Speaker and as presidents of these houses that you need to also pay attention to. So in this case, the Speaker could have put the matter on hold pending the evidence being brought forward and move on with the proceedings. So the caller is correct in that she lost in the debate because they weren't there to debate and challenge things in the supplemental bills.
So we lost.
But the caller needs to also understand that the order paper will have particular items. But when the government presents, and the leader of the government side presents the bill, or whoever presents, you could get the order, the particular aspect that they're presenting and how they present it, politics being intermingled. And that gives you leeway as the other side to challenge certain things politically. It doesn't have to be on the order paper. It's how the debate develops. And then the last thing is that you have a right as a parliamentarian to exit anytime you want, whether it's in controversy with what the Speaker says or something else. But that's your right as a parliamentarian and as an individual. If you're challenged professionally or not, on something and you're not happy about it, you could leave.
You can leave also.
And then you could come back and address it at another time. Or there's other ways to address issues in the Parliament. So there's a question period where you can have written questions sent to government ministers or representative of ministries for answers. And there is a point in the debate where the ministers present on the various ministries, and then you can ask very searching questions in that period to give us explanations as to why certain things are not happening that you say would happen, and these type of things.
So that's interesting. I think it was a very balanced comment here. Chris, I want to move on to agricultural matters, Chris, I learned this week that the Grenada Poultry Association has elected a new executive. Let's look a little bit at what's happening in this subsector. We import, the last numbers I'm seeing, about $26 million worth of chicken annually. Before burial, the numbers were, the local poultry industry was employed about, the numbers I see is about over 750 people. You had about 450 producers. But what's interesting, they were doing close to 10% of the local market. But post-burial is down to 5%. Because of the loss and other issues here. 5%, that's small. But the government, the poultry policy that the government, that is...
Developing?
Not developing, that exists, that is gives local poultry producer 40% of the market. So 40% of the market is for the local production.
How much you said, 26 million pounds?
$26 million
you don't have that in pounds?
Import. No, I don't have that in pounds.
Okay. So I wanted to see what 40% represent in pounds.
So it is likely, with this low production right now, that we can have shortages for Christmas, certainly of eggs. But where is the investment coming from to move our local production from 5% to 40%? I mean, is that going to happen? How should it happen? Because poultry, there's a high demand for poultry protein.
Well, we are chicken eaters.
We are chicken eaters.
But I'm told that the hatchery.
Because let me just finish also. Because what the Poultry Association also says, they owe, I think, $170,000 to the hatcheries in Barbados. They said the price of freight has doubled, but I understand the government has agreed to cover that cost for them, which is a good thing, I believe, at least to take them out of that situation. So, because the Poultry Association imports the young chicks, so there are issues. But the question is, how are we going to go from 5 to 40?
Well, first of all, if the government is giving them an upper level of 40% of the poultry market, I think it cannot happen overnight. It has to take time. So it has to be a phased approach, probably 5 to 10 years. Because these things don't just happen.
No.
You have to build the internal wherewithal. The factories have to come up. You have to have the feed issue and the cost of feed and the quality of feed. The possibility of disease happening and what happens to them and in the poultry. Processing in parts. As we do know, we have leg quarters, we have wings, we have the wings part. I mean, there are a number of areas that they have to get packaging, how they package. And then, of course, the price per pound. That is a significant thing. Yes, we love fresh chicken because we can always argue that when it comes from Brazil and other places, it's been in storage for God knows how long.
It thaws and freezes.
That's right. And but the aspect that the Brazilians and these people who ship in chicken here is that their prices are subsidized. And that is where we get a difficulty to compete in the price per pound. So because of their economies of scale and what they produce in volume, they could cut the price per pound significantly.
We can't compete with it.
That all local farmers. But we have to do and take the bull by the horns and say that if we give the poultry industry a certain amount of support and subsidies to grow their percentage from 5 to 15% in year 1 or by year 2, we have to be prepared to pay a little more because the investment is going to be more, and we have to be prepared to deal with the quality issue. So I think there is room for us to do that because it's a huge part of our market. We eat more chicken than any other pork and beef and so on. And the price and the economies is critical for our ordinary people and the average man on the street. So we know we do back and neck, we do all kinds of parts of the chicken, chicken foot, whatever it is we do. But the point is we have to get the industry properly structured and managed. I'm not certain the Poultry Association is equipped with a level of personnel. I don't know who's the new executive. I may be talking out of turn, but I would like to see that and understand what is their strat plan to meet that 5 to 40% over the next 5 or 10 years. How they intend to mitigate the risks that will approach them. What kind of support does the government and all of us as citizens need to give them so that they can achieve these targets. So they need a certain amount of structure and a certain amount of vision as to where they want to be.
The cost of feed is also a major issue.
A major thing. And do we need to continue with the Caribbean agro monopoly? Because we could get feed out of Trinidad, I'm told, much cheaper and have a better quality. So all of these things are things that needs to be discussed
several
openly.
attempts also to establish a local hatcheries.
Yes, has failed. I know we had one in St. Andrews one time.
Yes.
A lot of equipment was brought in, but somehow the eggs and the thing that the hatch was a problem. And so, I mean, we need to develop, and then the science. Right? Why must we take eggs, not understanding the quality of the eggs? What are the tests that we need to develop on our own? So when we buy eggs or we buy chicks or whatever we buy, we could do a quality inspection for ourselves, and they come a certificate of analysis, a certificate of approval that these are the certain standards and quality they meet. A lot of these things need to be put in place, because remember, this is a food item that you're selling directly to our people.
And it's an area that you want to put focus in the whole food security initiative. But Chris, we're going to take a short break, viewers. We'll be right back.
Keep drinking water storage units clean and covered when not in use to avoid contamination. Drinking water is best stored in airtight bottles and buckets for safety. A message from the Grenada Food and Nutrition Council.
Grenada, get ready! A new season of the Grenleg Debates is coming. Informative, impromptu, bright young minds sparking powerful ideas. Tune in.
Grenada, come get your money! We know it's been a while, and now we're back! Because on Sunday, October 6th, Megaforce Promotion says all roads leads to Monroe Plainfield for the most exciting bingo game ever! Bucks and money! We're talking 20 bingo games and $100,000 in a box! You decide your winnings! This is gonna be pure fun and excitement! So get your tickets now! $60 for one or $100 for two! Grenada! Get ready for $100,000 in cash as Megaforce Promotion presents Bucks of Money, Sunday, October 6th at Monroe Plainfield. You just gotta be there.
Welcome back, viewers, to MTV Community Forum. I'm your host, Byron Campbell, co-host Chris Diali here. Chris, there's an interesting case that just concluded in Trinidad at the Privy Council, I'm to understand, where the unions, where the government of Trinidad and Tobago, in fact, took a decision to privatize the custom services, and this was challenged by the union, the appeal courts, and even so it went to the Privy Council. And the government won its case. So it means that the government of Trinidad and Tobago can now privatize the operations of the customs operations. And we know that this has happened in other territories. Why should we be concerned about this particular case that recently occurred?
Well, it was challenged on a constitutional basis, and they lost, the applicants. But I think it sets a precedence for us in the Caribbean, because it's a CARICOM country, where other governments may look at this case, look at the formula that has been proposed by Trinidad, Republic of TNT, on the privatization of customs. I mean, there's a lot of pros and cons, obviously. The pros would be the level of political interference with how customs now operate by being a department of government, essentially. and there is the issue of corruption, of course, and of course issues of, there's the pros now, efficiencies within the department, and so on. Now, of course, the cons will be, without a private company, how do they level control in terms of what happens there? Because this is a huge national income earner for the government. Of course, they could argue, again, on the positive side, that you get more qualified people to come in to that entity, and you hire people based on qualifications and experience and so on. They will have their own board. Obviously, it will be comprised of a tripartite in nature, government, private sector, and labor, and you develop it. But I think it's something we should consider as countries, because we need a lot more efficiency in collection efforts, in dealing with people who want to defraud the government, to doing all kind of strange thing with invoices, and have it applied consistently in Grenada. For example, the huckster trade. I remember years ago when I was president of the chamber, we had two codes, two duty rates for the hucksters and for other private enterprises, and we challenged that. It was illegal under the Customs Act. I'm not sure if it still exists, but here you had a certain group of business people called hucksters that are doing the trade, the informal sector trade, and they were given preference with rates. All of these things will stop on a private entity in its sense, and give you a more level playing field for everybody.
So it's something that you can evaluate, look at the examples, look where it's working.
Yeah, New Zealand has it for years now.
Yeah,
nothing new there. And there's other countries I'm certain that you could look at and fashion something that will suit and work for us.
Food for thought.
Yeah.
Chris, we just had a comment from a viewer who was making the point that the viewer says, look, all the time we have governments from year to year awarding scores of scholarships in various disciplines overseas, SGU and other places. What are the follow-up? Are there any bonding? It seemed to be this area is loose. Persons I have spoken to who have received scholarships, some remain permanently in the United States. I don't think it is taken seriously, personally.
Well, no, I want to differ. In recent times, I know the bonding aspect of the scholarship have gotten serious.
It's gotten serious.
Yes.
Now.
For example, I stand to be corrected here, but all students who get scholarships to go and study medicine in Cuba must come back and serve the country for a particular number of years. That is part of the bond. If not, and they break the bond, they have to pay the cost of the scholarship. And that is fine.
But what about doctors at SGU? I don't know about them serving at all. Many of them stay, I know several.
Well, years ago, it was loose. And they will come back with the argument that in my particular area of study or specialty, there is no room in Grenada for it to develop. So if you come back as somebody from Cuba trained in, let's say, heart specialty, you could argue that the surgery and so on for heart and dealing with heart issues, putting in a stent, doing a triple bypass and so on, you're not equipped to handle it. And they will say they need a release to go to a country where there's the kind of facilities
in
and so
your
on.
entire life, Chris, have you heard of any penalties for someone breaking a bond in Grenada, not serving?
No, I have
exactly.
not.
I think it's loose, Chris, at best, I think.
No, and as I said, they tightened it up because they had the same comment like you.
Okay.
That take for example, I had a government scholarship when I went to study engineering.
Right.
When I came back in my specialty, which was the nutmeg industry, that is what my thesis was on. Nutmeg told me there was no room for me anyway.
Yeah.
So here I'm on a bond, and I need to work. I need to get my professionalism done. And I ended up in paint as a chemical engineer. So I say the argument is both sides.
Yeah, okay, fine.
And we need to provide opportunities as well.
As well, of course. And those scholarships are critical and they're very important because a lot of our students cannot afford it. Parents cannot afford it. They cannot afford their loans and so on. So this is a great thing. Chris, I've learned that there's increases in ATM charges. Using the ATM now, automatic teller machines will cost you more. Yes. What do you know about this?
Right, so there was an announcement recently that came out that said all machines that operate on the Connex platform. Connex meaning cooperative bank, credit unions, all of them.
Yeah.
Once you insert your card, if you are a customer of, say, cooperative bank and you have a card and you insert, you will not get a charge.
Yeah.
But if you're using your credit union card on a co-op machine, On the Connect system, you will get a charge. The charge used to be 84 cents, I'm now told is 90-something cents, an 18% increase.
Okay.
Now, the impact to me here is that banks in Grenada have taken a decision to move people from inside the bank to outside the bank,
Yes.
to the ATMs.
Yes.
So they're furnishing more ATMs per parish, so that more people who get paid, so example, government will pay fortnightly. When you go and you see the lines on the 15th or the 16th, it's huge lines.
Yes.
And so you're outside in the elements, rain, thunder, lightning. You're not inside the bank. Some banks have provided ATMs that are enclosed, but when it's 3 ATMs, you can only use 3 at a time, and then people are standing outside.
Yeah.
So there is that issue to deal with. And now you're being charged more.
Yeah.
Now the banks, I understand, could argue the use of ATMs and the technology and what is happening with our new notes and what it's causing, and of course people try to corrupt the machines and do all kind of strange things, is costing them more. The fact that you could be hacked with the use of your card and the machines have to be protected against that is all background cost that needs to be managed.
Yes.
So they could probably justify the increase.
But why some banks have charges and some banks don't have charges? That's the question.
I mean, there's some banks in Grenada that don't charge.
Exactly.
Once you use their own card, but you can't use other cards in their machine.
Exactly.
Now, on the Connect system, it could go anyway.
Okay.
Across all credit unions.
Okay.
So it's more universal in that sense. And then you could use your normal MasterCards and Visa cards and so on. But you never know, that may change.
Yeah, that may change.
And all the banks will start putting up.
Because I've decided to get rid of my. I don't want any electronic gadgets on my pockets or elsewhere, because you see what's happened in Lebanon. I mean, like, guys, pagers, the walkie-talkie just blow up in their face. One surgeon says in his life, this is the most
eye surgery.
Eye surgery, eye removal. Oh, yes, surgery, of course. I mean, this is like 20 person dead. Hundreds and hundreds are injured. I mean, why should I keep this gadget when it can hack it and blow it in my face?
Not agree with me.
Yeah.
But I am most impressed of how Israel used this technology to their advantage. Now, could you imagine, let us assume of every 10 people that got affected, 8 were Hamas people, let's say, and you're blind or half blind, these 8 people, what is the long-term effect of them in the war? So,
but
I mean,
I understand that point.
I hear that.
But the other point is clearly Israel seemed to be wanting a war.
Of course.
Because this is agitating, because you're not responding, what's the threat you're responding to? And I have to understand, reported that this came early because it was felt that Hezbollah intelligence were on top of it. Something was coming out. So they ran with it early. I understand it should have been a bigger kind of strategy. There was other immediate follow-up. But now what Israel has said is that the front of the war, and Israel has considered the Hezbollah, that end and the Gaza end as the same war as far as they're concerned, So they're now moving troops more to the northern end, So it's all very unfortunate, I think, because this present, but the point being made here, I mean, notwithstanding Israel ongoing criminal actions, the point made here is that, and concern here is that how your technology that is in your pocket could be turned against a weapon.
Byron,
and kill you.
In this war, or in any war, or any thing, communication is key. Now, you're in Hamas and them position. You don't want to see a pager, you don't want to see a cell phone, you don't want to see a walkie-talkie. You have crippled my communication network.
Clearly.
I have to physically send a man on a camel, a horse, or a bike
to
send a message.
Chris, that's all the time we've got.
It's amazing, but
Clearly.
I am always amazed at how Israel will use this technology. And it's frightening, if that type of technology gets out and throughout the world, people could use that against you, criminal elements.
But you have to give Israel credit for that, because the intelligence is super to have intersected these devices, plant this explosive in it and get it out. It's amazing. Viewers, that's all the time we have. We'll see you next week at the same time. Have a good evening. Bye-bye.